Hey everyone, and welcome to another Explainer, where we're going to take a really deep dive into the fascinating and frankly quite complex world of India's local self-governance experiment. We're looking at a system that was fundamentally designed to bring power to hundreds of millions of people, literally straight to their doorsteps. It's a story of incredible ambition, some deeply frustrating roadblocks, and, as you'll see, a few quiet revolutions along the way. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The vision of grassroots democracy. 2. Panchayats, the reality check. 3. Municipalities and the urban struggle. 4. The silver lining of empowerment. And finally, 5. Fixing local bodies. Let's get into it. Starting off with Section 1, the vision of grassroots democracy, a constitutional dream. Now, this journey didn't just happen overnight. It actually took decades of committees hashing things out. It started way back in 1957 with Balwant Rai Matha proposing a three-tier structure, and then Ashok Mehta in 78 pushing hard for direct elections, and then finally the landmark 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments in the 1990s gave these local bodies actual constitutional life. When that 73rd amendment hit, it was incredibly ambitious, a real game changer. It mandated a uniform three-tier system right across the states, and it required elections every 5 years to prevent that historical stagnation we were seeing. But arguably the most crucial part, it packed the 11th schedule with 29 essential items. We're talking heavy-hitting responsibilities like rural sanitation, poverty alleviation, and education. The blueprint was absolutely massive. Which brings us to Section 2, Panchayats, the reality check. So, what happens when this grand vision hits reality? Well, the systemic failure of panchayats usually crashes right into something known as the 3 Fs, which basically keep them trapped. First, they lack funds. They're highly reliant on scheme-specific grants rather than actually generating their own revenue. Second, they lack functions, meaning no real compulsory administrative powers. And third, they lack functionaries. They suffer from a severe shortage of trained, on-the-ground personnel to actually execute their plans. A World Bank study actually summed this up perfectly, calling the whole situation a half-baked cake. Think about it. On one side, you have this massive political success with regular elections and incredible inclusion. But on the flip side, terrible administrative failure. Gram Sabhas, which are the foundational assemblies, often completely lack compulsory powers. And those local development plans we just talked about, they usually just get suffocated under the super tight grip of district bureaucracy. So why exactly does this happen? Well, scholar Paul Brass points out the root cause here, and it's pretty simple. State-level politicians are just too insecure to hand over real power. They are terrified that deeply empowered, opposition-ruled panchayats might endanger their own political influence in their local constituencies. As a result, the local bodies are intentionally, structurally starved of authority. Moving right along to Section 3, Municipalities, the urban struggle. Let's shift from the villages to the cities. It is honestly startling to look at this 2022 study showing that urban local bodies generate less than half, only 47%, of their own revenue. The entire rest of their budget relies on outside dependency. Seriously, think about that for a second. How can a city effectively govern itself, or even just fix your local potholes, when it doesn't control the majority of its own wallet? To put that into an even sharper perspective, India's total municipal revenue sits at a microscopic 0.45% of our GDP. The global average? It's around 6%. Our cities are literally, structurally starving for cash, yet they're somehow expected to deliver world-class infrastructure on an absolute shoestring budget. Economist Ishur Judge Ahluwalia hits the nail on the head here when explaining why cities can't make money. Their primary revenue tool is just wildly politicized. Instead of property tax being this objective, steady source of city funding, it becomes a total pawn. State politicians use it to win favor, completely undercutting the municipality's ability to be financially independent. Take Maharashtra as a perfect example. They completely waived property tax on small residential buildings in Mumbai. So, the local financial health was completely sacrificed for state-level political gains. On top of that, institutions like ward committees remain totally toothless. And then you have these state-controlled parastatals, like the special purpose vehicles for smart cities, that actively bypass and subvert the authority of the local mayors. All right, on to Section 4, the silver lining, empowerment. With all these structural roadblocks, the lack of funds, the rampant political interference, you really have to ask yourself, is this whole grassroots experiment just a complete failure? Did those 73rd and 74th amendments actually accomplish anything meaningful on the ground? Well, to answer that, let's look at Rousseau's famous observation.
Women born free but everywhere in chains. Because the truth is, local governance reservations are finally breaking those chains in India. By mandating one-third reservation, and honestly, many states have bumped that all the way up to 50% now, the Constitution essentially kicked the doors of political agency wide open for women and marginalized communities.
And the data totally defies the early skeptics, who assumed women would just act as proxies for their male relatives. A Parisia study shows a remarkable 60% of elected women are making independent decisions. Add to that Esther Duflo's field research proving that female representatives significantly improved the delivery of public goods. And maybe the most undeniable proof? A massive 45% re-election rate for women representatives.
And hey, we aren't just talking about dry statistics here. These are real women changing rural landscapes. Take Maja Wankade in Maharashtra, successfully driving the construction of school toilets and smokeless stoves. Or look down south at the Kudumbashree's self-help groups in Kerala. They work directly with panchayats to ensure deep political accountability and build rock-solid economic self-reliance for women.
But let's keep it real. Massive societal hurdles are absolutely still out there. The infamous Sarpanch Party phenomenon is still a reality in places, where husbands illegally take the oath and pull the strings on behalf of their elected wives. Combine that with a glaring gender digital divide. A survey found only 24% of female representatives in Bihar even had smartphone access, and it's obvious the playing field is far from level.
So that brings us to our final section, Part 5, Fixing Local Bodies. We know the problems, we see the potential, so how do we actually fix the hardware of this democracy? Well, technology offers some huge immediate wins. For instance, Telangana achieved a staggering 172% increase in property tax collection simply by geotagging properties. By digitizing the process, local bodies can bypass a lot of the local evasion and just drastically increase their own revenue streams. It's brilliant. But beyond the tech, we desperately need foundational structural fixes. Step 1. States must emulate Kerala by systematically devolving up to 40% of their budgets directly to local bodies. Step 2. We need clear activity mapping so local functions aren't constantly overlapping with state agencies. And Step 3. We absolutely must enforce a strict code of conduct and train bureaucrats so they actually work with elected local reps, not against them.
And the good news is, the 15th Finance Commission is already pushing for this from the top down. They've tied massive grant increases, we're talking a 52% jump, directly to performance. If local bodies want those funds, they have to hit basic entry conditions, like publishing audited accounts and officially notifying property tax rights. It's an incredibly smart way to force accountability.
I'll leave you with a final thought today, inspired by Pratap Bhanu Mehta. The constitutional framework is there, the empowerment has definitely begun, and the glass of decentralization is certainly half full. But to pry those remaining funds and functions out of the hands of insecure state politicians, it's going to require grassroots demand from the citizens themselves. So, are we ready to demand our local power? Think about that the next time you head to the polls. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and keep learning.